This is Hossein Antazari with a quick review of security disparities in built environment using the theory of crime prevention through environmental design or SEPTED strategies. This study aims to measure spatial inequalities related to risk in Des Moines, Iowa. Previous studies have identified several factors that influence the perception of safety and security. They could be categorized into two main groups. First, the relationship between demographic indicators, prior experience of victimization, and fear of crime. And second, the connection between the built environment and people's perception of safety. Based on the former category, studies have found that older people, low-income people, females, and those who have a prior experience of victimization are more likely to report feelings of insecurity than others. However, this can be affected by many factors. For instance, Holtz and Kossep in their paper have shown that people often have insecurity perception when they are in a situation in which they have been victimized before, such as walking alone along a dark street. The built environment seems to be one of the main factors influencing public perception of crime and security. People can be protected from criminal activities by access management, natural surveillance, territoriality, physical maintenance, and the image of an area in terms of its connection to the surrounding environment. In this regard, Jane Jacobs found different kinds of city streets linked with various types of insecurity perception. While some of them provide no opportunity for crime, others might present more possibility of barbarism with no protection for victims. Consequently, this makes public spaces in a city a place to live. Although these studies have supported the idea that the commitment of crime can be reduced by planning and design policies, they seem to be limited to the character of a built environment in a given urban area, regardless of socio-economic condition of its residents. So, the research presented here examined different urban spaces along a transit line in order to explore security disparities in built environment in relation to vulnerable population. The core SEPTED strategies used in this research basically comes down to four parameters, that is, surveillance. Will offenders be seen? Is the design of features facilitate or maximize visibility? Access control. Can offenders get in and out easily? Is the use of real or perceived barriers and features restrict inappropriate access? Territoriality. Do residents care things are happening in the place? Is the use of physical attributes express a sense of ownership? And maintenance. Do residents keep the place in good condition? How is the repair, replacement, and general upkeep of an area? In this project, each variable made up of several sub-variables that were used in order to be rated and find the general value of safety practices in different environments. The sub-variables were rated using a score from 0 to 5. Then, the average of the given rates were calculated as the value of SEPTED elements. In the end, the findings on SEPTED values were compared with percentage of low-income and minority population in each transit point. Data collection is based on GIS, the website of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and field observation via satellite images. Satellite images were utilized because due to the coronavirus pandemic in the United States, walking the proposed transit lines and doing a research interview was prohibited. The transit line is 6.5 miles long and includes urban and rural areas. It begins at the urban center where the Iowa State Capitol is located. Then it passes through a railroad and an industrial area as a potentially harmful infrastructure. The line also crosses the MLK Parkway and the surrounding area. After passing a neighborhood close to the city center, it crosses the high and low elevation connection points in the riverfront. The line then goes toward the south and passes the commercial and residential areas. There is an elementary school in the middle of the transit line, an urban space with various kinds of activities and land uses. The line then passes a shopping center and a commercial area. In this point, there is another school that is separated by a roadway from the residential buildings and is surrounded by natural spaces. Going toward the south, the line passes another neighborhood and some green spaces as the natural edge, single houses, multi-family residential buildings, and the agriculture areas. Finally, the transit line reaches the rural environment in the south of the city. The graph shows how SEPTA variables in the physical built environment changed along the transit lines. While territoriality and access control illustrate various changes, there is little difference in the trends of surveillance and maintenance for all the points, with the exception of the last point, that is a rural residential area. According to the scores of the variables, surveillance is in its highest point in the area around the elementary school and the shopping center. In these spaces, there are clear sight lines, sufficient lighting, security systems, and human activities. Surveillance reached its lowest points in the non-residential areas where there are abandoned buildings and vacant lots. These areas will not be seen well during the day and especially at night, so it is a surveillance fail. Access control is in its highest level in the middle of the transit lines where there is a neighborhood and an elementary school. It is the same in the Thames Point, which is a mixed-use area. According to these pictures, can I get in and out easily? Absolutely not, because the places are under control and are protected by barriers. On the other hand, the transit points located around railroads, industrial areas, and natural environment do not pass the access control test. Especially at night, there are gonna be a failure of access management because of the absence of continuous barriers, gates, and the presence of escape routes. In terms of territoriality, the existing features in downtown and the new neighborhood show somebody care what happens in that places. There is high territoriality due to the personal items, signs, fences, and the landscape features. The level of territoriality is in its lowest point in rural area and along the natural edge because there is nothing to disconnect the homes from the surrounding area. Looking at the home landscape, does anybody care what is happening here? Probably not. Also, the absence of physical barriers created a space with little territoriality. Most of the neighborhood and the urban center pass the maintenance test excellently. The images of the landscape send a clear message that the crime is not accepted and somebody cares what happens outside the wall. Also, the decorative elements and building condition look like somebody is maintaining the area, which means one is really claiming ownership. Differently, non-residential areas and the neighborhood along the roadway are not good places from the maintenance test perspective. In these cases, the condition of the buildings and landscapes say few people care what is happening here, and it feels less risky to do illegal activities. The line graph represents household average, the percentage of minority and low-income population change throughout the transit line. Based on the demographic study from the data of 18 transit points, there is a considerable difference between SEPTA practices and types of urban areas. This graph shows people living in a neighborhood with the lowest minority population have the highest SEPTA practices. It is also noticeable that, although the results do not show a direct association between low-income population and SEPTA practices, in many cases the ratio of SEPTA value rose dramatically where this rate declined. Security perception through SEPTEP strategies can be improved by planners, designers, and ordinary people in all the urban environments, regardless of their residence income level and race. Designers and architects should increase their efforts to provide a kind of urban form and building typology that facilitates a natural surveillance and decrease hidden spaces. They also should take actions to limit the escape routes in neighborhoods and provide a mixture of uses in urban areas in order to enhance security concerns. There is no doubt that if the vacant lands be repurposed for new uses such as green spaces and playgrounds, the social controls would be increased. Not only decision makers, but also NGOs have a role to play in teaching local people to apply SEPTEP strategies in their environment. Local residents, moreover, can address crime prevention if they keep up their own properties and yards, socialize with their neighbors, improve lighting in private and public spaces, install elements that both provide territoriality and surveillance, and promote security measures in their homes and workplace. Thank you so much for your interest and attention.